The press room went completely silent. Not the polite silence of a formal media event. The kind of silence where you can hear the hum of the air conditioning. Where journalists forget to type. Where cameras stop moving because no one knows what to do next. A 21-year-old had just walked into that room, sat down behind a microphone, and said something that no professional tennis player at any age had ever dared to say on camera. And the entire room held its breath. But to understand why those words hit so hard, why they spread to 60 million people in less than 24 hours, you first need to understand everything that led to that moment. Because what happened in Paris on May 25, 2026 was not just about a tennis match. It was not just about one loss. It was about a system that had been silently breaking athletes for decades, and one young woman who finally decided she'd had enough of staying quiet. Let's go back to the beginning. Court Philippe Chatrier. Roland Garros. The red clay of Paris, still damp from the morning rain. It's 5 in the afternoon, and 15,000 people are packed into the stands, an ocean of red, white, and blue. Filipino flags everywhere. Some of these fans had crashed airline booking systems trying to secure flights. Some had spent savings they'd been setting aside for months. Some had flown in from London, from Dubai, from Sydney, all to witness one player. All to watch their hero, Alex Eala. The 20-year-old from Manila who had somehow, impossibly, become one of the most electric presences in global tennis. The girl who had turned a tournament in Rome into a homecoming. Who had caused ticketing websites to collapse under the weight of Filipino fans trying to see her play. Who had walked into the biggest arenas in the world, Melbourne, Madrid, Paris, and made them feel like they belonged to her. She was ranked 38th in the world. She was getting better every single week. And this French Open, on the clay she loved most, felt like it could be her breakthrough moment. But here's what nobody was talking about heading into that first-round match. Alex Eala had been pushing through something. Not a visible injury. Not a publicly known controversy. Something quieter, deeper, more dangerous. The slow accumulation of a season that never breathes. Weeks on the road. Tournaments stacked on tournaments. A body that needed rest but was given only movement. A mind that needed silence but was surrounded by noise. The professional tennis calendar is brutal in ways that don't show up on highlight reels. And by the time Eala stepped onto Chatrier against number 31 seed Wang Xinyu, a player who had already beaten her once, at a brutal Auckland semifinal 4 months earlier, she was carrying more weight than her racket bag. The match lasted 2 hours and 11 minutes. And if you watched it, you know that those 131 minutes were not the story of a player who was outclassed. They were the story of two warriors carving into each other on red clay, point by grueling point, neither one willing to fold. Eala had match points. She had moments where the crowd held its collective breath, certain the match was turning. She played some of the best tennis of her clay season. She lost 3-6, 7-6, 5-6, 3. And here's where something shifts. Because when Wang Xinyu raised her hands and celebrated her victory, the story that every journalist in that media center was preparing to write was already forming in their heads. It was the familiar story. The talented young player who fought hard, who will learn, who will come back stronger next time. Gratitude. Reflection. Promise. That is the script athletes follow after losses at Grand Slams. You thank your opponent. You acknowledge the work you need to do. You smile for the cameras. You say the things people expect you to say. But nobody warned them about what Alex Eala was actually about to do. She walked into that press room pale-faced, red-eyed, jaw set. Her mother Rizzo was in the back of the room, hands clasped, lips moving in quiet prayer. Her coaches stood against the wall, arms crossed, expression unreadable. The first few questions were routine. How are you feeling? What did you learn today? How do you reflect on your best clay season yet? And Eala answered each one the way she always did, with grace, with intelligence, with genuine reflection about her game, about the privilege of wearing the Philippine flag, about the progress she had made on clay. And then a veteran journalist raised his hand. Alex, he said, you played well enough to win today. What do you think beat you? The room leaned in slightly. Eala looked down at her hands. She was quiet for a long moment. Long enough that a few journalists glanced at each other. long enough that the room seemed to understand, on some animal level, that whatever was coming next was not going to be routine. She looked up. She looked directly into the cameras. "I played well enough to win," she said. "Something else beat me." Silence. Not just Wang. Something bigger. And then she leaned into the microphone, and she told the truth. She talked about the pressure. Not the match pressure, the other kind. The kind that accumulates over months. The schedule that never stops, the travel that never ends, the weeks and weeks away from home, from family, from anything resembling stillness. She talked about a body that keeps breaking down because the system gives it no time to heal. She talked about a mind that keeps spinning because the calendar gives it no space to breathe. She talked about the rankings points, the expectations, the 40,000 fans who had bought tickets before she even knew whether she'd be healthy. She talked about 110 million people watching from home, carrying their hope through her, adding the weight of an entire nation to everything she was already carrying. And then her voice cracked. "Something else beat me. And it's not a player, it's a system." Nobody in that room typed anything. Nobody moved. The camera that had been drifting slightly to capture the audience reactions stayed locked on her face. The hum of the air conditioning became the loudest sound in the building. That was the moment. That one sentence, "It's not a player, it's a system," was about to travel faster than anything tennis had ever produced. Because it wasn't just about Alex Eala. Everyone in that room knew it. Everyone who would see the clip online in the hours to come would know it. She wasn't talking about herself. She was talking about every player who had ever burned out before they reached their potential. Every young athlete who had broken down on the road and smiled through it for the cameras. Every professional who had quietly walked away from the sport they loved, not because they stopped loving it, but because the machine had simply taken too much. She said what players had been whispering in locker rooms for years. She said it on camera. And what happened next was not a slow burn. It was an explosion. Within minutes of the clip being posted online, the hashtag #EalaSpeaksTruth had exploded across social media. Within the first hour, it had been viewed millions of times. By 7:30 in the evening, 30 million people had watched those 45 seconds. By midnight, it had crossed 60 million. And that was just the clip. The reaction clips, the analysis pieces, the commentary threads, those were generating their own tidal wave. The WTA, still dealing with a separate code violation controversy from earlier that day, watched their communications team scramble in real time. But here is something that most people missed in the chaos of that night. The most powerful reactions were not coming from fans. They were coming from the players. From the people who lived the same schedule, breathed the same pressure, felt the same weight. And what they said told you everything about how deep the problem actually runs. Coco Gauff, who had advanced to the second round, posted something that cut through all the noise. "I've known Alex for years. She's not a complainer. She's a fighter. When she speaks, I listen. Maybe we all should." Aryna Sabalenka, the world #1, added her voice. "I've been there. I felt that weight. The schedule is insane. The expectations are crushing. And sometimes after a loss like that, you just need to let it out." And then Naomi Osaka, the player who had once stepped away from the sport entirely to protect her own mental health, weighed in from her hotel room. "The bravest thing you can do is admit you're struggling. The second bravest thing is asking for help. Alex isn't asking for help. She's demanding change. And that's even braver." Think about what that means for a moment. 3 of the biggest names in women's tennis. The current world #1. A 2-time US Open champion. A 4-time Grand Slam winner. All 3 of them, independently, saying, "She's right." Not offering empty condolences. Not diplomatic deflection. All 3 of them saying, "She's right, and we all know it." The WTA issued 2 statements. The first one, "We acknowledge Miss Eala's passion and remain committed to player welfare," was already being mocked across social media before most people had even finished reading it. The second statement, drafted late that evening, was even worse. No concrete changes. No timeline. No accountability. Just words stacked on top of words to create the appearance of a response without actually responding to anything. Former players, many of whom had retired early because the grind had simply taken everything they had, began sharing their own stories. Kim Kleisters, who had once walked away from the sport at 23 before returning years later, posted a lengthy reflection. "I hear Alex. I was her. I loved tennis, but it was killing me. The travel, the pressure, the expectation to be perfect every single week. I needed to step away just to remember who I was." She's saying the same thing, except she's saying it while she's still in the fight. That takes a different kind of strength. And then Billie Jean King, the legendary advocate, the woman who had spent 5 decades fighting for fairness in the sport, offered words that landed like a verdict. The system is not designed to protect players. It's designed to extract value from them. Alex Eala is not weak for speaking out. She's strong. She's leading. And we need to listen. But here's the thing that nobody saw coming. Because what Alex Eala did in the hours after that press conference was not what most people expected her to do. She didn't disappear. She didn't retreat to her hotel room and go quiet. She didn't let her team manage the narrative from a distance. She didn't wait for the story to settle before making her next move. The morning after her loss, she walked back onto the practice courts of Roland Garros. Not to train. Not to hit balls. She was there to meet a group of young Filipino tennis players. Kids, most of them, who had traveled from across Europe to watch her compete. They were still there, these children carrying flags, their faces a mixture of sadness and something harder to name. And Eala walked out and stood in front of them, red-eyed and exhausted, and she told them something that would be shared millions of times. "I lost," she said, "but losing doesn't make me a failure. It means I have more work to do. And that's okay." She looked at their faces. You're going to face losses too. In tennis. In school. In life. You're going to face people who tell you you're not good enough, that you don't belong, that you should give up. Don't listen. Keep fighting. Keep believing. That's the only way. One of the girls, no more than 10 years old, raised her hand. "Alex, how do you keep going when you're so tired?" And Eala knelt down to meet her eyes. "I think about my mama. I think about the flags. I think about all of you. And I remember that I'm not fighting for myself. I'm fighting for everyone who believes in me." The fan captured that moment on a phone camera. Within hours, that clip had been shared more than the press conference. Because it showed something the press conference couldn't. It showed that this wasn't a player melting down under pressure. It showed that this was a person of extraordinary depth, carrying an extraordinary burden, and choosing not to put it down. Later that day, Eala sat for an interview with a Philippine journalist. Her voice was still raw, her eyes still carrying the weight of everything. But what she said revealed a clarity that caught everyone off guard. "I've been thinking about what I said in the press conference. Not about whether it was fair. About whether it was enough." The journalist asked what she meant. Words are powerful, but they're not action. I can describe the problem all day, but if I don't do something to actually change it, nothing moves. So I'm going to use my voice, not just in press conferences. In meetings. In conversations with the WTA. With tournament directors. With the people who make the decisions. I'm going to show them the numbers. I'm going to tell them the stories. I'm going to make them understand that this isn't about me. It's about every player who has ever burned out, broken down, or walked away. The journalist paused. That's a heavy task for a 21-year-old. Eala smiled. The first real smile since the match. "I've never been afraid of heavy tasks." Now the French Open was continuing without her. New matches were being played, new storylines were developing, new champions would eventually be crowned. And under normal circumstances, the story of a first-round loss, even a high-profile one, would begin to fade within 48 hours. That's how the news cycle works. That's how it has always worked. But this was not fading. Because the question Alex Eala had forced into the Open was not a comfortable one, and it was not going to go away just because a few days passed. The WTA, facing mounting pressure from players, journalists, fans, and former champions simultaneously, announced that they would accelerate their review of player wellness programs. No specifics. No timeline. But the door had cracked open. And everyone watching knew exactly who had cracked it. The conversation she had started was already moving out of the tennis world entirely. Sports columnists who had never written about women's tennis were writing about it now. Sports medicine experts were being asked to appear on television panels. Athletes from other sports, football, athletics, swimming, were posting in solidarity. Because the system she described was not unique to tennis. The machine that extracts from young bodies and rewards performance over humanity, that machine exists everywhere. She had named it. And once something has been named clearly, in public, by someone credible enough for 60 million people to listen, it becomes much harder to pretend it doesn't exist. Her ranking was projected to slip from 38 to 42 after the loss. For places. In the grand architecture of a tennis career, for places is a breath. It is nothing. But in the algorithmic logic of the WTA points system, the very system she had called out, those 4 places carry real consequences. Entry into tournaments, seedings, draws, earnings. The mathematical machinery that governs careers and determines fates operates without emotion, without context, without any acknowledgement of what a body or a mind has been through. She knew all of that when she spoke. She said it anyway. And that is the part of this story that deserves to sit with you. Because there is something that is easy to miss when you watch the clip of that press conference. Something underneath the words, underneath the cracking voice, underneath the red eyes and the pale face. There is a moment, and you have to watch carefully to catch it, where Eala pauses before she answers. Where she looks down at her hands. Where you can see, in real time, the decision being made. The choice between the script everyone expected and the truth she had been carrying. That pause is the whole story. Every athlete who has ever faced that moment and chosen silence, every one of them who has smiled and said the right things and walked out of the room still carrying everything they walked in with, that pause is for them too. She chose differently, and the world is still deciding what to do with that choice. The French Open would continue. Matches would be played, sets would be won and lost. Champions would eventually be crowned on the red clay of Paris. The draw would narrow. The headlines would shift. That is the nature of a tournament that doesn't stop. But the question that Alex Eala planted, loud and clear and impossible to ignore, would not narrow with the draw. It would spread. From locker rooms to boardrooms, from fan forums to parliamentary hearings, from one generation of players to the next. The question of how to protect the athletes who make the sport possible. The question of whether the machine that produces tennis greatness is also quietly consuming the people inside it. That question is now on the record. And the only thing left to determine, the thing that will define whether this moment meant anything, whether those words did more than go viral, is what happens after the cameras stop rolling. What the WTA actually does, not what it says. What the tournament directors choose, not what they announce. Whether the players who nodded along and posted in solidarity are willing to back those words with action. Whether the fans who shared that clip 60 million times are still paying attention a year from now, asking whether anything changed. When the next young player, the next 20-year-old who loves this sport with everything she has, faces the same weight, the same schedule, the same invisible accumulation of a season that never breathes, will she remember what Alex Eala said? Or will she remember what Alex Eala's words actually changed? That is the question that doesn't have an answer yet. And that is exactly why we're still talking about it. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell us what you think the WTA needs to actually do, not what they've promised, but what genuine change would look like. And subscribe to Court Legacy for more stories that go beyond the scoreline. Because in tennis, as in life, the most important things rarely make it onto the highlights reel.